I think I was correct, right?
I think you're correct. I don't
That's
think you'd get
hilarious.
canceled on this one.
Yeah, first episode, Jared, and you're already getting canceled.
I thought that was chronological.
Okay, so in this episode, we cover primarily three films, which is 1955 Kiss Me Deadly, 1967's Point Blank, and 1993's Batman, The Mask of the Phantasm. All noirs from different periods. We really get into what a noir film really means, borrowing a lot from Paul Schrader's writings on noir, specifically notes on film noir, trying to define it because as we see in this podcast, it's a very nebulous concept that's constantly evolving. What else do we cover in this one, guys?
Some contentious ideas of what is or isn't noir.
That's right. And we also talk about the kind of elements that contribute to the mood of a noir. Is it the location? Is it the lighting? Is it the color or lack thereof? What elements make a good noir film, and how can you extrapolate that out to modern noir films as well?
I think another key piece that we mentioned was just breaking down noir into different subtopics, whether that be a classic noir, a neo-noir that heavily references the classic style, and then some of the more contemporary neo-noirs that we see permeating post-1990 that end up being, what we contemporarily call a thriller.
All right, hope you guys enjoy. Welcome back, everyone, to the Cinema Retro Podcast. Today is our Noirvember edition. It is November, and we will be talking film noir. We are your hosts, as usual, Miles, Isabel, and Jake. And today we have a dear friend, Jared. What's up, Jared?
Welcome, Jared.
What up? Happy to join you guys.
How's it going, man?
Good. All good. It's happy Noirvember.
Yeah.
Thank you.
It's one of my favorite months of the year.
I'm pretty sure you told me about the concept of Noirvember back in the day, so this episode is in some sense indebted to you.
Thank you.
A little introduction. Jared is a friend of mine. We go way back, all the way to high school, and we actually originally bonded over a class where we discussed film noir and westerns. Shout out Mr. Cullen. And that was when we really started first dissecting movies and talking about it and getting into it. And I would say even back then, I always had more of an affinity for westerns, and you always had more of an affinity for film noir. And I think
That says like so much about each of you, actually.
and so it's to my first question, which is, Jared, why noir?
I didn't get into classic noir until I was in college. When I got up to school, I got caught in the normal freshman going to bars, and it got really boring very quickly for me. And so I retreated into my room and just started watching movies. And I noticed that a lot of my favorite movies as a kid, when I was growing up, were a lot of those mid-2010s neo-noirs that came out. Gone Girl and Inception, A Shutter Island. And so I started digging into why I liked those films, realized that it was a new style of a classic, and so I started digging in to the originals.
And before we get too deep into the analysis, I think I want to just define noir a little bit because, we all like movies and we watch tons of movies, but when you talk to your average person, they might not know what noir is. So I guess I'll kind of hand this over to you guys. What do you think people mean when they say film noir?
My mind goes very much to like 40s, 50s cinema, where there's usually like a crime, there's usually a central leading man who's like a private eye, detective, mystery, suspense, darkness, morally ambiguous characters, and a suspense that doesn't necessarily become like a thriller, or like it doesn't get too supernatural at any point. It's just kind of like human mystery darkness, if that makes sense. But that's not a very academic answer. Like I'm not, that's just how I would describe it to my mom or something.
I also have a non-academic answer. When I think of, per usual, when I think of film noir, I really do think of lighting. That's one of the first things I think of. Shadow, visual imagery, rather than a theme of a movie. I'm always thinking about the kind of moodiness that Paul Schrader described, which I'm sure you'll go into later, Miles. I also always think of Double Indemnity, actually, because that was my first introduction to film noir. I think my grandma's, one of her favorite movies was Double Indemnity, and so I always think of that as the framework for how I see the whole genre, I guess.
So, well, Jake, like you say, you think of that movie with noir, but I was wondering, like, what about that movie?
Well, it's one of the first kind of pre-end of World War II entries into the noir genre, but I guess it's just the classic crime caper. There's obviously some moral ambiguity in it, but to me it just looks and feels like that old style.
I think it's a really good example because some of the earlier noirs were very much like high dramas or very stylized, and Double Indemnity is very everyday. It's a very pedestrian movie. You know, like some of the biggest scenes in the movie take place in a grocery store. It's about everyday people and the lengths that they'll go under extreme circumstances to do crime or betray people or what have you. I think that's a really important aspect of it. Like what Isabel mentioned, like it can't have a supernatural element. Of course, you'll find counterexamples, but I would say your classic noir, it's about everyday people and kind of the corruption and darkness that is unique to everyday life.
That's what I meant to say.
Yeah.
Jared, what about you?
I agree. I think Double Indemnity is definitely the quintessential noir. I think you also have In a Lonely Place, Sunset Boulevard, where they have this classic private eye detective. He has a longing for the past, often told in flashbacks. You've got The Presence of Water, of Femme Fatale. Like, as Miles was saying, you kind of see this character who's often morally ambiguous to start, and, you know, by the end of the movie, through all the seedy grittiness, often sultriness that you see from this societal underbelly, this character started at maybe ambiguous, and now by the end, he's, you know, fully off the deep end.
I was thinking about that meme when you were saying that, where it's like, babe, you're not a 1940s detective.
You need to have the fedora as well, I mean, of course.
And a
Trench
straw,
coat.
or I guess a bunch of cigarettes, right?
Yeah, it's like, beat it, toots. So now that we've laid some groundwork of what it is, I want to go to what Paul Schrader wrote about noir, because I think he really pinpointed it in an interesting way. He says, film noir is not a genre, but a style of film and a period of film. I had kind of considered noir a genre before I read that. Noir is defined by tone and mood over conventions of setting and conflict, versus other genres like a Western or a gangster film. They're defined by conventions. So I thought that was pretty interesting. What do you guys think are some of the defining elements of the noir genre?
Well, I also read that after you sent it over, Miles, the Paul Schrader essay on it, which I'd never done before. One of the things that stuck out to me was that he said the noir hero dreads to look ahead, but instead tries to survive by the day. And that immediately had me thinking of Killing of a Chinese Bookie, which we talked about on the first episode. And I was like, oh, is that a noir film? Maybe it is. But I thought that was really interesting. And to me, that element seems like something, if you took that away from a noir film, it wouldn't be a noir film anymore.
Totally.
Yeah, I agree. I think that that longing for the past as well, as long as we're talking on time, is also a really big trope. I mean, a lot of the old ones, in classic noir, you'll see that they use like a voiceover or something, and it's kind of them recounting, like, record scratch, how did I get here kind of thing. I think that's in Double Indemnity too, when he's, you know, bleeding out in the cabinet office room at the end. So, yeah, I think that's a key one. I think the Femme Fatale is also a key one, this kind of seductive woman that's really pulling him onto the other side.
Yeah, I also, because we're, 60s, 70s primarily podcast, it's fun to think about how the genre changes from the 40s and 50s to 60s and 70s. I feel like Chinatown is a really good example because it's like obviously supposed to be a noir film of the 40s, but I feel like it becomes such a period of the time that it was made when you get a lot of these more like vulnerable moments with the Jack Nicholson character and with Faye Dunaway. I think I've actually talked about that in this podcast before because I had been watching a lot of noir films from the proper like early 40s. when I had watched before I watched Chinatown, and I was so struck by like, wow, this moment of Jack Nicholson's character like lying in bed after they've slept together and like being very vulnerable is something you never would have seen in a proper noir film of the earlier time, because you had the code. Legally, you weren't allowed to show something that's sexually explicit, as well as what type of men we are okay to see on camera and what type of men we want to see and what sides of men we want to see on films changes a lot, I think, during that period. So I really like that movie as kind of like an example of how noir changes as a genre throughout the 70s.
I like that. And then Schrader breaks it down to 4 elements, which I think are really interesting, and I'll posit these to you. He goes post-war disillusionment, realism, the German influence, and the hard-boiled writing tradition of tough and cynical writers. I think those you can kind of find in all classic noir. Post-war disillusionment, obviously, coming back from World War II, people are disillusioned with the idea of American society, and they get more cynical and pessimistic and all that's been lost. And there's kind of this more sardonic, sarcastic, cynical view of life. Realism, shooting exteriors, on-location shooting, trying to get at what real life is like instead of what a studio lot looks like. The German influence, tons of German expats came after the war, and like Fritz Lang and these people, and they brought new styles of lighting, like Jake brought up in the open, chiaroscuro, which is like high contrast of lights and darks, really harsh shadows. I think that's like what you guys brought up before, key to the whole noir style. And then last would be, the Raymond Chandler type writing of these really tough, cynical, usually men, usually private detectives, usually betrayed on some kind of revenge plot or mystery plot, trying to track down the people who betrayed them. And then he also I'll just run through this pretty quick. He has these really specific observations that I think are hilarious. Like one, he says, a Freudian attachment to water, glistening rain, docks, piers, which is like, how could you even find that similarity in so many movies? Venetian blinds, which is kind of the obvious one. He says actors and settings are given equal lighting emphasis, which I thought was pretty interesting. And then also kind of an obsession with oblique and vertical lines as opposed to horizontal lines. He talks about cinema of Howard Hawks or John Ford when movies were very horizontal. It was about wide open landscapes. And noir is very kind of cagey in that way. It's in these urban environments. It's vertical, it's canted, it's claustrophobic. And I think that reflects the inner psychological confusion of the protagonists. So now that we've given our viewers a little bit of groundwork, Jared, I'll pass it over to you, and I'll say, could you just tell us some of your favorite noir films and kind of your experience of first watching them?
I love Gilda. I love Laura. Sunset Boulevard. Out of the Past. In a Lonely Place, I love. That's one of my absolute favorites. I'm more on the neo-noir side. I think Vertigo probably gets in there. I just watched Point Blank in preparation of this, which I really, really enjoyed. Yeah, Gone Girl, Inception, all good ones.
Wait, I feel like that's an interesting, like, something maybe we could talk about is this, like, very new neo-noir. Because there's, like, 60s, 70s neo-noir, and then I feel like maybe in the 90s is where you get, like, a whole new shift of films.
I think
Yeah, but whatever, I don't know. What do you think about that?
so the 90s really, Michael Douglas was king, and you had all the erotic thrillers, which
Right.
I think kind of birthed those later, the Inception, the Gone Girl, the Shutter Island. I've spoken miles about this before, but I kind of split all the noirs into 3 different topics rather than 2. So you have like the classic noirs, the Humphrey Bogarts. Then you have the early neo-noirs, which to me is like Chinatown, or like a more recent one's LA Confidential. That's kind of a remaking contemporarily of the original style. Then the third kind of other is some of these newer neo-noirs that kind of take the overall landscape, but they add a massive wrinkle to it, like Blade Runner. That's neo-noir, and that's kind of its own thing right there.
Now that you've told us a couple of your favorites, let's get into Kiss Me Deadly, because to prepare for the episode today, we asked Jared to pick 3 noirs from each kind of era of noirs that really get at what he loves about the style, genre, period. And he picked Kiss Me Deadly as the first one. Jared, could you give our viewers a little plot summary of Kiss Me Deadly?
So the movie starts, and Mike Hammer is a detective, and he essentially runs into this woman as he's driving who's got nothing on but a trench coat, and she's, strolling the streets late at night. And they get into the car together, and then it kind of cuts, and he's surrounded by gangsters. He's been kind of abducted after they get into an accident. The woman's gone, and the rest of the movie is kind of Mike trying to dig out, the mystery of what happened to this girl. So, there's so many other noir movies that are, where did the girl go? But, this is one of the first ones, I think, that, tracks it from beginning to end. And, along the way, we pick up a lot of different, sultry side characters who are trying to either steer Mike off the case or, hopefully, jump on his team because they, too, feel like they can benefit from finding whatever gold is at the end of this tunnel.
And Isabel, could I pass it off to you because I know you kind of did the deep dive on this one.
Yeah, I really loved this one out of the three. I think this was my favorite. And it was great hearing a bit more about Schrader's definition of noir because I think that post-war disillusionment is so central to noir being in that time frame. Kiss Me Deadly, a large part of the conflict, it becomes apparent that it's about a nuclear weapon, or it's implied that it's about a nuclear device kind of that this girl had gotten mixed up with, and now this private eye is kind of getting mixed up in it. And so that's pretty explicit to me, of a fear that is only after World War II and during this time period. But also there's the film itself, the way it's shot, the characters that you meet, there's just a lot of gritty, grimy violence going on. Everybody's really self-centered and cruel. There's a lot of double crossing. It's just kind of a quintessential 50s noir film, which is what I love in these types of movies. I think this one is especially violent and crude, but I kind of think that's the boundaries that noir films, that was always what they were pushing against. It was this violence and this crudeness and this sexuality. So having this one be kind of exceptionally that, but also so indicative of the films of the time, I really enjoyed. But this is my first time seeing it. I found it on a random internet archive thing. So did you find it?
Yeah, so I watched it for the first time probably 6 years ago, maybe. And after I realized that I inherently liked this genre, I went through a list of all-time noirs. And this was one that was, number one or number two on the list. But it was one that I had never heard of, never seen an actor or actress in it before, never heard of the director, never read about it. And then I couldn't find it to stream it anywhere. So then I was like, wow, what is this? So I watched it and absolutely loved it. I think in this one, every single character is somebody who's dirty. In some of the classic noirs, you have at least somebody who's looking out for everybody, and that person may get got at the end. But in this one, even the gentleman who was the coach at the boxing ring, and you go to meet him and you think that, he's praising all of his boxers and everything's good. Then you find out from the detective that, he fixes a lot of the fights. And so you think that even, the few people who are actually good and looking out for the community are still even the kind of people who are going to cross the line.
The love interest of the main detective, it's not they're just boyfriend and girlfriend. He's secretary who he's having a dirty affair with and having marital sex with. Even that's supposed to be the love of the film is tainted by some, social faux pas, which is kind of interesting.
Yeah, I think one of the assumptions of the noir style or genre is that everybody is in it for themselves and that they'll betray you at the drop of a hat. And that kind of seeps into all these stories. I think of probably my favorite noir, Out of the Past, Jacques Tourneau's film with Robert Mitchum, and same sort of logic, which is that the people who love you and the people who are closest to you, they're one decision away from just dropping you and betraying you. And I think that's kind of one of the big themes of the genre, is that you're really just in it for yourself in this world, and you just gotta be a rugged individualist to survive.
I do think that there's an irony or a paradox within a lot of these films, and that the main character that you're always following, he's rugged. It's usually like a man, detective, private eye, who's, you know, sleeping with women and kind of maybe selfish, but he is also kind of always out for the truth. Like he's always trying to uncover something that's real. And I feel like in most films, he ends up doing the right thing, or trying to do the right thing, or trying to uncover the right thing. Like that, there is a paradox there, in that the main character that you're usually following has some type of goodness to them, even though they're this like rugged, like dirty investigator kind of usually.
That's true. And even with this, and also with Point Blank, it's the main characters are almost, they're stumbling into something, but then they continue on and they can't allow themselves to stop. If you're watching this as someone like me, I'm like, okay, I don't know what happened. I'm going to walk away and pretend this didn't happen over here. But they are confronting it head on and continuing through, knowing that these obstacles are coming their way, or there's these bizarre characters that have ulterior motives or have dark pasts, and they just continue on. Similar with Point Blank, and we'll get there, but I just want to make the point here. To looking for his $93,000 throughout the whole movie, and at some point things get so crazy, so many people have been killed. It's like, when are you going to say, okay, maybe it's not worth $93,000 to mess your life up this way? And it's similar with this movie. There's so many dark corners that he decides to turn down, and he continues to do it.
I don't think that that the detectives necessarily are good. I think that they just have nothing left to turn to, and so they often get aligned with finding out, you know, what's at the end of the road. This one in particular, I think that he was really after finding out whatever this big thing was, because he noticed that all these people were, you know, getting killed or dying or getting mixed up in this, and so whatever was at the end had to be a big prize. He doesn't have anything besides Velda, his secretary girlfriend, who he doesn't really care about in the first place. So
but he does, you know, he does go and save her at the end.
He does.
But I mean, you're right. I also, like, part of that wasn't it that he was like a PI, but for divorce cases. Like he's like a low-brow PI, and he's so excited about this case because it might like elevate the type of work that he does. So it's not. Oh yeah, and the whole movie starts because like this young woman is escaping from a mental hospital, and she's, you know, so victim in the narrative of the film, and you're obviously supposed to care for her, and she's incredibly charming and like really needs help, and he just doesn't really care and like is kind of just doing it for the plot. And yeah, like there's not really much goodness to him, that's for sure. But he still, like, you know, goes to save his kind of girlfriend, so that's something.
I just realized another similarity between Point Blank and Kiss Me Deadly. They both open with the protagonist getting in some near-death accident, which kind of takes them out of action.
Yeah.
And then, you know, they come to, and they kind of get on this revenge plot to track down the people who did that to them and try to get them back. And that definitely has something to do with kind of the purpose of noir. I think it has this kind of predestined, that's the tragedy aspect, right? It's like predestiny. It's like the heroes are almost fated from the beginning to fail, or fated to some certain outcome, and they struggle against it and they try to overcome it, but you can't really escape destiny. And both Mike Hammer in Kiss Me Deadly and Walker, you know, they start out and they meet this woman and they're driving along, or they're completing their mission successfully, and then Walker's shot and Mike Hammer crashes and almost dies. You can even theorize that maybe they died in those moments, and the rest of the movies are kind of just like visions of some other reality. I think that's more obvious in Point Blank, but I think you could even make the case in Kiss Me Deadly that also could have happened.
Yeah, definitely. And I mean, like, this into the 60s is really when you start having like French New Wave influences and avant-garde cinema. I mean, so much of New Hollywood also plays with like dreamscapes and broken narratives and stuff like that. So it is, I think, important that a lot of these stories, I mean, Vertigo also, like so much of Hitchcock is like mental games, and you're not sure what's reality and things are breaking down. I mean, and it's like reflective. I think a lot of like stylistic filmmaking choices reflect this kind of like moral ambiguity, archetypes breaking down. Sunset Boulevard is like so perfect because it's literally the fallen star, like this woman who's fallen apart, like who used to be a beacon of some type of virtue and fame, ideal, and now is like you see who they really are, like it comes apart. Yeah, it makes sense that the way that these stories are told are also starting to kind of come apart.
I'm curious what you guys think about the way that locations play in this. A lot of the classic noir films, I always tie them to California, San Francisco, Los Angeles. You have Chinatown, Sunset Boulevard, obviously the ones that we watch today. Even Blade Runner, it's like dystopian Los Angeles, all the way up to new stuff like Drive in Los Angeles. I wonder what makes that city so perfect, or also San Francisco, just the state of California so perfect to tell those kinds of stories. I even think to Citizen Kane. This summer, I went to Hearst Castle, which obviously inspired Citizen Kane and the home in that movie. It seems like the perfect place to tell a story like that. Obviously, apart from maybe the more inner city kind of like New York or Detroit, I'm thinking like RoboCop type of locales.
The West in American culture and in Western culture represents a rebirth, remaking yourself, an ideal. You can lose behind any past from Europe, from New York, from your parents, and like it's like this promise of something fantastic. And I think, height of 20s cinema of like big studios making these big movies for people, it had that kind of like dream and promise in it. And then really after World War II, people are disillusioned with that dream and disillusioned with the belief that they can leave the past completely behind. And so Hollywood itself and Los Angeles itself like encapsulate what's happening to people and what's happening to the narrative of America and what's happening to the narrative of Europe as well.
I like that theory. Tying back to Schrader, he really interestingly breaks down the different eras of noir, and the last era that he assigns Kiss Me Deadly to, he calls the psychotic action and suicidal impulse era of noir, which I thought was kind of interesting. There's a lot of like people going crazy in this movie more than earlier noirs, and I kind of noticed that even like the atom bomb and the way that people act around the atom bomb in that final 30 minutes, I think everyone's kind of losing their mind over that. So I kind of just wanted to ask you guys, what do you think? What do you think about that framing of it? That this late stage noir is, he says it's about a loss of public honor, heroic conventions, personal integrity, and psychic stability.
I think that generally a lot of people consider this to be the death of noir, at least in its classic form. So I definitely back that. I feel like, its inclusion of the atom bomb and kind of that hysteria kind of gives birth to some of the proto-neo-noirs, like a Vertigo, for instance, like a North by Northwest-ish. That's kind of has this buzziness feeling where that protagonist is, always a bit paranoid. And I think that then further leads to the De Palma style thrillers that again keep on building on that, the conversation, even something as simple as Panic Room.
Yeah, I mean, I think the paranoia is very much just like part of what living during the Cold War felt like. So it makes sense to me that that's like reflected in the characters and in the crimes that they're investigating and the way that things are unraveling. Also, I think like Freud published his first book in like 1900. So, it's been a while in this period since Freud has come out, but like I think psychoanalysis is like really becoming a thing, and really getting a lot of popular uptake. More so like in the 30s is when it first hits, I think, America, but I think it still very much means a lot to people. And with the paranoia of the Cold War, because of the way that technology is working and the way that like politics is working out globally, I think people are interested in looking inwards at their inner psyches and in their relationships as a way to like understand their paranoia and their fear and their anxiety, because Freud's like effect on the 20th century like lingers so much.
Yeah, Jared, that's interesting what you said about this being the death of noir. I hadn't heard that before, but now that you say that, I do think that the 50s represents a downturn in noir for multiple reasons, but I think one of the big ones is that at the core of noir is the idea that American society is corrupt, that it's kind of broken. And that idea going into the 50s becomes less acceptable to talk about with the rise of McCarthyism and the Cold War. And you have this idea that all movies should represent a more cheerful representation of American life, and that we're doing great and we're beating the Soviets. And you don't want to talk about how the cops might be corrupt and people might have alcoholism and people might be betraying their loved ones. So I think this kind of is, like you said, like the high watermark of noir. And yes, it survives, and we're going to look at some later iterations of it where I think it even might have reached its peak. But I do think that there is a decline in the genre after this because of, let's not talk about the corruption in America. Let's make America look good in movies in the 50s. What did you guys think of that final scene on the beach in Malibu, like where the house is exploding?
That was crazy. It's very Indiana Jones. Was that Raiders of the Lost Ark where like their faces melt off?
Yeah.
And also like the sound design is so crazy. It's just like a scream for the last like 5 minutes straight of like the house burning down and this girl's face melting off and the dummy in the flames. It was so crazy. Apparently, I read that like the ending got changed, and in the original screenplay, the main two characters who survive like talk more, or it's more apparent that they like have been exposed to radiation through like nuclear poisoning, and it's a little bit more ambiguous. Are we gonna live? Are we gonna die? What's our life gonna be? Versus the ending that the film is right now, it's more they escaped, the house burned down, and that's kind of done with, which I thought was interesting.
That's pretty interesting. Now that I think of it, radiation is kind of like the perfect noir idea, because it's like this thing that it's predestined. Like you might have escaped, but you're gonna die anyway because you have this like, curse that follows you. That's so quintessential noir.
There's this really good funny movie that I saw at Metrograph a couple years ago that reminded me of Kiss Me Deadly. It's called Them, and it's a very like Red Scare anti-communist propaganda that was made in the United States. And it's about like
Is that the movie with the giant ants?
yeah, it's like supernatural ants, and it's all about like the danger of hive mind essentially, and it has like a very scary, ambiguous ending where it's like, well, we've killed the ants now, but like the hive mind could always come back, and it kind of does have that like paranoia, radiation, things are always lingering, danger is always around the corner kind of thing that I think, yeah, like a lot of the noir and a lot of like post-Cold War art, I think, is dealing with.
Yeah, that's funny you bring that up, because in Point Blank, the iconic scene is in the LA River Basin, and in
Right.
that,
Yes.
and then there's also that iconic scene of all the police running through the dry bed of the LA River, tracking down the ants.
Yes. So
And
true.
those are like the two things that come to mind when I think of the LA River shown in movies, is them and Point Blank. You guys want to discuss Mask of the Phantasm next? Okay, this one was kind of a curveball. Jared, could you just tell us why you love this movie and why you
Yeah.
kind of had us watch it?
When I was speaking about the three different noir subtypes, I feel like this one falls into type 2, which is that Chinatown LA Confidential-esque, where it has all of the traditional tropes of a noir, but it kind of is packaged as a kids movie in the 90s. And so I watched this movie a lot as a kid, and I always really liked it. And then when I was taking film courses in school, I started to dissect the idea of how, some of the superheroes of my childhood were really derived from noir, especially Batman being number one. And I then rewatched this movie as part of that course. And I saw, the detective, obviously. I see the femme fatale. I see the longing for the past. I see the flashbacks. I see the use of water. I see the, big, corruption, influence from gangs. And so it has, every single, trope and trait that you would package in a normal noir. It just happens to be 115 minutes instead. And, it's officially a kid's movie, but I think that it's really dark. You see these two, characters, the Batman character in this, as well as his love interest, Andrea Beaumont. And you see that the whole film is kind of him, Batman, longing for this past time that he had with this woman. And in turn, by the end of the movie, you see that they both are kind of set off on self-destructive paths because they just can't get out of the past themselves.
Out of the past. Whoa, call back. that was good.
Yeah, so this is, a Batman movie. It's an extension of the Batman 90s series that's very acclaimed. The movie is essentially told in a series of flashbacks as Batman, one of his original love interests as he was growing up, a woman who he bonded with over the death of his parents, as she had lost her parents as well. And, she comes back into his life, and throughout this movie, we see a series of flashbacks to understand how they got to this moment, being that in all the flashbacks, they were very much so in love. And while this is happening, you're seeing a series of other characters from, these 20 years ago or so kind of reemerge in the present. And so you're wondering, why are all these people kind of back in Gotham City? And, what is causing all this anarchy in the city right now? What is the common link?
Awesome. Yeah, I think one scene that I thought was pretty emotionally mature for a children's cartoon was when Batman has the binoculars and he's looking into the restaurant, and in the reflection of the lens of the binoculars, it's his lover's hand in another person's hand. I just thought that was a very like De Palma or like Hitchcock type image that I was surprised to see in a Batman cartoon. I thought that was really a really cool.
Yeah, it's very stylistic. Everything is like very beautiful.
There are two big memes in this. So the first one is that one where he's looking at the binoculars, and so there's the water coming across his face, but it also looks like he's crying. And then there's the famous like "I'm gonna go be a demon" meme where Batman is about to put on the mask. Can definitely share that one. I've got it a couple times. And he's about to put on the mask, and so it in the movie symbolizes that he's going to go back to being Batman, and he's distraught and heartbroken. So people use it online when they're going to relapse and do some terrible things. Like that.
That's hilarious.
I feel like you've sent that to a few group chats, huh, Jared?
No. Just I received it, but turned it down politely.
Got it.
I will be using that when I debut my new Dark Deco aesthetic.
He's going mask mode.
And you have a lot of people saying that the recent Batman, the Matt Reeves directed film, was like Seven, but with a cape. And there's this idea that people are leaning, with the new adaptations of Batman, people are leaning more into the private detective aspect of it, which I think is maybe less emphasized in the Nolan films. I think the Nolan films are noir stylistically, but I think they kind of lean away from like the Sherlock Holmes Batman and more towards him as I don't know, maybe the billionaire.
It's very theatrical in the Nolan, and I think that the Reeves is going for the realism.
Yeah,
a bit more.
I really like that. About this one, Mask of the Phantasm, I love the paintings of the backgrounds, like the ones in the first few minutes of the film. I thought those were beautiful. It's kind of like reminds me of those old matte paintings from 50s studio films. Just really cool backgrounds. And I've also seen posts on Instagram where they just like take frames of that and they put it to like cool jazz, and they just it's like a ambient
12 hours of Batman backgrounds.
Yeah, exactly.
So on the art for the movie, this movie is attached to the 90s TV show. And so I think their names are Bruce Timm and Alan Burnett. They kind of invented this artistic style, which is known now as Dark Deco, which combines the conventional 40s Art Deco style of the original detective and the original film noir with this more sultry, even darker animation style. So if you want to go see the 12 hours of Batman stills, you can look up Dark Deco, and there's a lot of different animation blogs and topics about it. There's one scene in this movie also that's really interesting when Bruce and Andrea are leaving some event, and there's the biker gang scene, and Bruce is trying to beat up these guys who are trying to steal from an old man or something on the street. And that scene's actually heavily inspired from Akira. They got one of the art designers from Akira to come work on the TV show, but specifically this scene and in that movie adaptation. So it's it's very quirky, but it's a cool film, I think. So that's why
I think
I wanted to share it.
No, I'm glad that we watched it, and this is our first time discussing an animated film on the podcast, which is great. I think, I love animation. I think it's a really cool art form, really. And one of the things that animation has to do is have very strong, visual archetypes, because that's how you understand that there's different characters, and Batman does that so well because he's so big, and, Andrea's so skinny and hot, and, they just play everything up, which I think makes I mean, like Art Deco as a movement and as a period of time, like it was dramatic and over the top, and everybody kind of was a caricature. So it works really well having like the animation itself, as well as the time period, as well as noir, which is like transgressing archetypes that you get to know. So I just thought it was a really fun combo.
I totally agree. That's so funny that you mentioned that, Jared, because I didn't know Dark Deco was a thing, and I love that. I'm gonna have to Google that or Chat GPT it.
Wait, you are so Dark Deco. That is
I know. I was thinking
so
while
true.
we were watching this, I was like, we do not get enough dark Art Deco movies. Little did I know Dark Deco was a thing. It totally reminded me of the 90s Dick Tracy movie, which it's another movie that I feel like you can watch just for the aesthetics alone. There's so much there, and it's similar in a way. It's sort of like a live action version of that. Of course, Dick Tracy and Batman have similar comic book roots, but I really did enjoy that. And a lot of this, the style of this, it reminded me of going back to the Paul Schrader piece. He talked about how in terms of style, vertical lines are preferred to horizontal, which I thought was such a bizarre yet interesting insight, because it really is those really tall buildings, the massive backgrounds. It just felt, even the style of the way that the bodies were drawn, I thought it was really fascinating. So I really liked it, and it was an unexpected pick, but I thought it worked perfectly. And when you start going through the list of all the elements of film noir, it fits like a glove.
Jared, when you said Dark Deco, I saw Jake's eyes light up. He's like, I found my new aesthetic. He's like,
Yeah.
when I think of Art Deco, my mind immediately goes to Ayn Rand and the covers of Fountainhead and Atlas Shrugged with these, kind of like Greek tragedy influenced titans like holding up planets and objects. And I think Batman is the quintessential Ayn Rand figure. He has this heroic ability that nobody else has, but he's held back by this kind of bureaucracy and system that he has to kind of like break through to save the day. And I think that's kind of the people have written before about Batman in this political lens, and how in the Batman universe, law and order is this obstacle that Batman has to get around or get away from.
And he's like a really virtuistic billionaire, right? Like his money is what gives him power.
The Western, the ultimate tension of the Western is between the outlaw hero and the official hero. And Batman is kind of in this film and a lot of his adaptations kind of the quintessential outlaw hero. He's like, I'm going to go above and beyond the law to do what's right. But even though officially we know that he shouldn't be doing these things, at the end of the day, we accept it because we know that he's doing it for the right reasons.
I liked how they used the House of the Future as the Joker's lair. I thought that was really funny. And now that we're talking about it, I mean, it seems perfectly noir. You have the optimistic, not House of the Future, City of the Future. House of the Future, that's funny. The City of the Future as the Joker lair, and it's all decrepit, and it looks like, a circus or something. Reminded me a little bit of the Lady from Shanghai at the end, where they're in that kind of fun house with all the mirrors and everything like that. But that's felt like such a perfect locale to tell a story like that.
I thought it was a great movie, and I think it gets to another thing, not to always tie it back to Schrader and be annoying, but he does say that film noir is interested more in style than theme, and that the theme is hidden in the style. And I thought that was kind of an interesting take, applying especially to this cartoon where everything is style. I mean, you can draw the buildings, the people, the spaces however you want. So it's very, like Isabel said, stylistic, intentionally stylistic. And then he says, film noir depends on choreography over sociology, and American critics have always been slow to understand visual style. I think American movies, they kind of want their messaging up front. They want to know how to feel about the characters right from the get-go. And I think noir is one of those ones where everything is being communicated to you through the lighting, through the shot of the binoculars with the water, like through these more subtle visual cues. That's how you're learning about the characters instead of them verbally explaining it.
I think Americans still want black and white. I think Americans are still not very comfortable with gray area characters. So maybe we need more film noir these days.
I'm game, so, sign me up. The thematic paradigm was like that was a light bulb moment for you and I, where we were like, whoa, like this is it. This is not only it, but this is everything. And we bonded over that.
Yeah, and we had this teacher named Jim Cullen who was just like the GOAT. He was like the best teacher at our high school, in my opinion, because he just made history class like very interesting and very interactive and fun. And it wasn't this thing where he was just, reading from a dry textbook. He would kind of provoke us by putting cool questions to us or ways we hadn't considered before. He was kind of the first teacher who ever posed to me the question, is America a democracy or an empire? And so he just had these kind of very provocative theses that he would kind of throw at us and then just kind of let us all scramble and like figure it out. And I think that's what made his class like really interesting. And that's how Jared and I became friends, just in that class. Like we would constantly have this back and forth, and we noticed that we thought very similarly about a lot of these movies.
What class did he teach?
It was history.
Okay, cool.
But I mean, there are all these social science-based courses that were analyzing some big cultural topic and then going through different time periods for it, basically.
Yeah, and what Jared mentioned about the thematic paradigm, it's this document that we read in that class, written by this guy named Robert B. Ray, Thematic Paradigm. And the idea of the document was that in all these movies, American movies, there's these two opposing archetypes, the official hero and the outlaw hero. And the official hero represents, law and order and due process and civic responsibility and all the values that we propose we like. But then the outlaw hero represents, vigilantism and rugged individualism and all these aspects that we kind of are drawn to as Americans, but we have to officially decry. And he breaks down all these movies that have it, like the classic example being Star Wars. Han Solo is the outlaw hero, Luke Skywalker is the official hero. And then he just shows how this is just in pretty much every one of our mainstream popular movies. There's that dichotomy of the two heroes, and I think it's a very interesting way to look at movies.
This was in high school?
Yeah.
Wow, you guys went to such a different high school than I did. That sounds awesome. It sounds like a college class.
Yeah, it was kind of like a media studies class. Now that I'm thinking back on it, it wasn't really history in the traditional sense. It was like, let's watch this movie or read this document and then analyze it. Which I guess that's what history should be, right?
Yes, that is what history should be. Social studies too, yeah.
Yeah, the guy, Jim Cullen, he's a historian of popular culture. He writes about media, Frank Sinatra, radio, television, and how they've shaped American lives. He's written a bunch of books. I mean, he's a really fascinating guy. We're still friends with him on Facebook. He drops some banger posts now and then. He loves Taylor Swift randomly, which is just
red flag.
Which is so fun.
I guess she's like an interesting Americana figure. But wait, Facebook is a good Paul Schrader connection, actually, because he's still really kicking on there.
What are you talking about, like that page where it's like Paul Schrader's Facebook boomer posts or whatever?
Yeah, that's where his favorite post comes from, where he's like, every time I hear the word whimsy, I reach for my gun. I love that. But so should we talk about Point Blank?
Yeah.
Yeah.
Fun fact, Jake and I were kicking it with Paul Schrader the other night. True story.
I already did that, bitch. I was at a party with him last year.
She's mad because she wasn't there.
Oh.
Where were you guys? Yeah, what the fuck? Why didn't I get the invite?
You invited us to the party and then didn't come. It's the post-Teratati thing.
Oh, yeah.
Through your company.
He comes for those things a lot.
But, okay, here's what actually happened. Miles talked to him, and I just stood there with my glass, for the 20 minutes. It was great.
What did you talk to him about, Miles?
Walk in, and he's just standing there, by himself. I'm like, what the... I'm like, Paul Schrader's just, at this party, just,
Someone
chilling.
needs to escort this man immediately.
Well, he did have some, early 20s young female groupies around him, just standing around him. He was, sitting in a chair holding court. It's okay.
Okay, so he did have some, an e-girl harem in the beginning, but then we went away and we came back and they had dispersed and he was just by himself, like Wallflower, and we were like, "What the hell? We gotta go talk to Paul Schrader." Honestly, I've actually met him before. He did a screening and Q&A of Mishima, A Life in 4 Chapters at Sag Harbor Cinema, and I went up to him after and talked to him, but he definitely didn't remember that. So I just went up to him and I was like, "Mr. Schrader, big fan. What do you think of the movie?" Because there was a screening before. And then I started talking to him about Rolling Thunder. Have any of you seen that movie? He wrote the script for Rolling Thunder. And in Tarantino's book, there's this big debate if Schrader basically sanctioned the ending or if the studio kind of wrestled it away from him and made it this shitty ending. And I asked him about that, and he was like, yeah, I hated the ending. So the inside scoop that Schrader doesn't like how Rolling Thunder ended, but it's an iconic movie. But anyway,
I was thinking about the canyons when we were discussing like LA as the place for a lot of these noir films because that's like one of my favorite Schrader movies, weirdly. Also, yeah, Sunset Boulevard I feel like is the birth of the meta Hollywood movie, which is like still Hollywood loves to do today. Like cinema has still really not left Hollywood, mainstream at least. And so like Canyons is another cool iteration of like a noir film, very much meta Hollywood, very much like Fall of a Star. It is kind of like his own weird version of Sunset Boulevard, which is very like early 2000s type vibe.
I like that take. And Mulholland Drive basically being homage to Sunset
Yeah.
Boulevard in a lot of ways.
Definitely.
Jared, you love that movie.
If I was, to take one noir film with me on a desert island or something, I think that it would probably be Sunset Boulevard. I love its homage to Hollywood in general. How meta it was with Norma Desmond. And, when I look back on it, it's not as noirish as like Out of the Past or as a Double Indemnity. It really isn't as gritty. It's not as, but it is as dark. The darkness is just different. You're seeing somebody kind of melt from the inside out, as opposed to a Double Indemnity where oh no, this guy's who he thinks is his love affair is not really on his team. So it's a bit more complex in how it's a noir. It's not really like the other ones of that same time, but it does have those same tropes of there's the voiceover. I mean, the movie starts and the main character is dead in the pool, face down, and you really have that how did I get here kind of thing, and the whole movie's backtracking.
It feels very Hitchcock to me because it's so like there's so much weird power play between the two characters, and there's like psychological warfare happening the whole time in this very like subtle, controlling way. And I feel like I don't know, a lot of Hitchcock films have the same type of like character dynamics between two or three people, where it's a bunch of mind games and who's really in control and who's chasing who is often like unclear. Yeah. Is Hitchcock a noir filmmaker?
It's good debate. I would say suspense thriller is like a separate genre, but that there's
Yeah,
overlap.
yeah, I agree.
I would say like a lot of suspense thrillers have noir elements, but I would say they're two distinct styles.
Noir films, they like to keep the really like scary suspense drama towards like the very end usually, versus Hitchcock likes to play with it throughout the whole film. And I think Sunset Boulevard plays with it a little bit more because you open up, like you said, with the character dead at the beginning. So this like threat of this danger is always kind of like pressing at you, versus other noirs, even when like Double Indemnity, where you're like hearing a story in the flashback, you don't know that there's been a gunshot until the very end. You don't know that like death has been lingering this whole time. Or like Miles, I also saw you had The Third Man on like your list of favorite noirs, which I love. Things aren't uncovered, the danger isn't uncovered until like halfway through that film.
True. Okay, should we go on to Point Blank?
Yes.
Let's
All
do
right.
it.
Jared, why did you pick Point Blank, and could you give us a little plot summary?
Admittedly, I'd say that a gap in my film game is that I haven't watched too much late 60s, early 70s.
You came to the right podcast, though.
Exactly. So, especially in preparation of this, wanted to watch something in that category. And in my neo-noirs that I've watched as well, I've covered all the erotic thrillers in the late 90s, and I've done all the newer stuff in the 2010s. But this kind of immediate neo-noir era, aside from like watching something like Chinatown, I hadn't really explored very much. And some of the later Hitchcocks, I guess you can kind of throw in there. So that's why I picked it. With that, as far as a synopsis, the main character's name is Walker, and his partner's name is Reese, and he's a con man, heist gentleman. They go for a job as the movie starts, and he ends up getting double-crossed. And so he kind of spends the whole movie trying to, get revenge, and is frantically running around San Francisco trying to get to the bottom of where his score is and to right this wrong.
Great opening scene. I love that.
Yeah.
Well, first I want to say there needs to be a petition to bring back crime syndicates just called The Organization. I think we need to bring those back. That's all I'm going to say.
Bring back Alcatraz for a second.
Oh, yeah.
Double canceled. Everybody's canceled on this episode.
The first 5 minutes of the movie were so like They were so perfectly written, so deftly shot. The acting was incredible, and then the title card comes up again. This might be like a perfect movie, actually. I absolutely loved it. I don't even know where to start because I loved it so much.
Yeah, I agree. I think this is probably my top 10 favorite movies. Like,
Ooh.
I just like this. When I first saw this a couple years ago, completely blew me away. I mean, it like kind of took all the things I love about noir and mixed it with kind of like a European art house new wave vibe. In like the best of both. Stacked cast. You know, you got Angie Dickinson, that's my Hollywood crush. You got Lee Marvin, who's like the GOAT. You got these other smaller actors who, you know, they didn't really have big parts before this, and Borman like specifically found them and like kind of like made them stars. I just think it's really cool. And I listened to Borman's director commentary of the film recently, and he says that the movie is about Lee Marvin's character trying to recapture his humanity. He says that the character in the lore of his head, I don't think this is explicitly stated in the movie, but he says that Lee Marvin character went off to war as a young man. He saw all this trauma in the war, and he comes back and he tries to kind of recapture his humanity. And that's what the movie is about, is about this man who's coming back from the dead to try to basically become human again. What did you guys think about it was explicitly noir?
And this is the neo-noir aspect of it. He is kind of acting as a detective, trying to figure out where his money is. So, you know, this is a neo-noir wrinkle of what the detective trope really looks like in a new form. I think you see the, you know, corruption going on as far as, you know, he doesn't understand this whole like kind of conspiracy theory as to who's double-crossed him, how are they working. It seems like it's organized crime. So it comes back to those themes from an original noir standpoint.
Jake, what do you think about that? Like the idea of it being a noir, even though on the surface it doesn't really look like a noir, but it kind of feels like a noir?
Mm-hmm. Yeah, no, that's interesting. It's funny because on a very surface level, I definitely associate noir with black and white. And so other than the style aspects of it, though, I think it's the complex chronological order aspect of it is huge because that was one of the elements that Schrader defined there. And I think it definitely holds true here. Obviously, there's kind of like you have the Freudian attachment to water with the prison surrounded by a bunch of water.
Yeah, I was thinking about that also. Water in those cases is like both safety and danger because it like keeps the prisoners out, but it's also the way that the prisoners can get in. Anyways, go.
Well, there you go. I thought it was really psychedelic in some sense, even just down to certain scenes like the main character walking with his shoes and then the sound of his shoes becomes this kind of groove to get into this montage. That I thought it was fascinating. So maybe it's just being broken down into these elements that feel like noir, and then of course you've got this kind of revenge story that's crime based, this crime caper.
Yeah, there's this great part on the director's commentary where Steven Soderbergh, the director, is talking to Borman about the movie, and Soderbergh says, you know, I consider this a revisionist noir film. It's in color, it's not dialogue driven, it's set in a city that's noted for its brightness, not its darkness. So it has all these things, you know, that you would think it's not a noir. And then Borman jokes, he's like, it's a film blanc instead of a film noir because it's shot in this very pastel color palette. It's very bright. Borman kind of goes into this section where he talks about that, and he talks about how he was trying to do kind of like a hybrid of the traditional black and white expressionism style of classic noir mixed with this kind of new color photography and new lighting techniques. And I think this movie's gorgeous. I think it worked really well. But the way he used color in the film was really interesting too. He said on set, Borman had a paint can wherever he went. Like he brought a paint can around set and he would paint things. In the scene where they go in the penthouse with the exterior elevator and he has to go up and kill the villain, he like went in the garage and painted the columns in the garage yellow just to match Angie Dickinson's sweater. There's all these little things if you go back and watch. He pays such close attention to color theory and the way that each color kind of represents a different section of Walker's journey. Walker, in some sense, is going through the film from different colors. He starts out blue and he goes into a yellow world and he goes to a red world. And that's something you don't have in the classic black and white noirs, obviously. But I think that Borman brought a whole new element to it.
Well, I mean, it's still kind of doing the like storytelling through stylistic choices that I think noir likes to do a lot, which is kind of interesting. And it kind of has that European quality too to it, which is fun.
Jared, now I have a question for you. The common theory online is that Walker dies in the beginning when he's in the jail cell in Alcatraz. He's shot by the gun, and the rest of the film is either him dying, kind of imagining something, or it's like a dream as he's passing away. What do you think about that?
Yeah, I probably think that, if we fall in line with the traditional noir seediness, then he's probably dead. And we're kind of watching his little mental highlight tape of how he wished things could have gone. If he was able to kind of get all his revenge and get his money back. This is an interesting movie coming from a classic noir perspective because you do have that psychedelic nature. I mean, every time that he goes to sleep or he blacks out, you're seeing images kind of repopulate more than once. Remember, there's that scene where he and the woman are in the bedroom, and I think it's either him or the woman are on the bed, and it kind of loops about like 5 or 6 times, and it's so pretty, and there's so many colors there that you're not worried about any kind of narrative elements of it, nor are you kind of scratching your head wondering what's going on. It's just plainly nice to look at, and the movie kind of continues on right back into step every time you have these psychedelic moments. So, to answer your question, I do think that, he's probably dead in that cell, and it's just a fun little, idea of, how he wishes things could have gone.
So I don't believe in the dead theory, but I think that Borman intentionally put in things so that you can believe that. Like there's the big bad character in the end, Fairfax. If you notice, like Fairfax never kills anyone or beats anyone up in the entire movie, and he also never looks directly at Walker or vice versa. He's kind of this ghost that's floating throughout the movie, but there's no tangible connection between them. And then he leaves a lot of stuff like that in it that I think lets it go either way. But Jake and Isabel, what do you guys make of that death theory?
I mean, the film feels certainly like life flashing before your eyes, but it's funny, in the end of the film, just while we're on the thread of that last scene and the money being there, as part of the noir trope, you don't really get, as an audience member, that satisfaction of seeing him triumph and walk away with the money. And that feels very noir to me. He doesn't get to have that triumphal final moment of having won. And they even leave it open to whether he even takes the money or not, in my view. Maybe he didn't. Maybe he realized in that moment it was enough to just seek the revenge, and then he leaves the money. I'm curious what you guys think about that part as well.
Yeah, I think that's a pretty interesting take, because I think noir films have this special ability to have a very open ending where it can go either way. And I think this is like a kind of a classic example of that. I think another thing that makes it super noir is revenge, like the revenge being at the core of Walker's character. Being betrayed, especially by a femme fatale or a Black Widow archetype, and then having to go on this quest of revenge. That's like, basic noir right there.
I really like that thought. I think that it's super fun to think that he might not even take the money. Because again, a bit of what we were saying when we were talking about Kiss Me Deadly, he has nothing left. Like, what does he have to do besides go and try to find this money and track down, who wronged him? We've talked so much about how people go to the West because, they're kind of seeking redemption or, finding a new life or what have you. What happens when you go out there and then what you've built in the West as well? There's nowhere else to go. So he has one avenue, one angle, one direction, and it's just to, go until he can't go anymore.
I think that's a really, really sharp point. And I wanted to mention something about that too, because Isabel, I think you brought up the point about the West earlier. And yeah, there is that dream and promise associated with the West, but there's so much uncertainty too. And a bit of that lawless frontier element that really never goes away, I guess still feels so much like, I go out to West Texas all the time, and in some ways it still feels like a kind of lawless frontier where you're miles and miles away from civilization. If you look at even if you look at a satellite image of the U.S., half of it is almost completely dark. It's incredible, and so there's a lot of mystery, a lot of intrigue, but also a lot of hope as well. And I feel like that's where this genre really thrives.
One other thing I wanted to bring up, which I hinted at earlier, and Isabel, I think you'd be interested in this because it goes back to our Antonioni discussion, which is one of our first episodes. and kind of gets into the idea of the European art house movie and how that was kind of taking off at this time. But I was just kind of shocked that this was a studio picture. This is MGM. It's a major studio. It's an expensive movie. And this movie is so abstract. It's so open-ended. It's so ethereal. Like, I was just kind of flabbergasted that they let Borman get away with this, because, you know, if I'm the studio executive and I'm thinking, how can we make this movie make a lot of money to get a return on our investment, I'm not going to let Borman do any of the kind of intercutting and the weird abstract images and the out of chronology and all that great stuff, which I'm so glad he put in, because that's what I think what makes the movie special. But if you're just thinking about it from a bottom line motive, you're not gonna like that stuff.
People were like eating that stuff up at this time. Like, this is the height of being able to do that. Not that you ever really could do that for big audiences, but to the extent that you could in America, I think this was it. And there is still a lot of like buzzy bits. Like, there's a lot of, you know, sex and mob and crime and mystery and intrigue. There's still plenty to like sink your teeth into and to keep you on a baseline intrigued. But at the same time, like, audiences are hungry for avant-garde films at the time. Like, this is really when French New Wave and European Antonioni films are coming over, you know, and like the film festival circuit is really kicking off. Like, international film festivals are really happening. So people can play with those types of filmmaking choices.
Do you see it as directly pulling from those movies? The Antonionis and the Fellinis and the French New Wave people?
Maybe on like reflection, they're like the broken timeline and the flashes and the cuts and stuff like that. That, to me, that is very French New Wave.
Borman joked that when the studio first saw their rushes, they were like, oh, this guy needs a psychiatrist, because this stuff is just too far out and like too weird. And the only reason that he was able to get away with this stuff, he says that Lee Marvin called this big meeting with the studio head and the producers and the agents, and he was basically like, I'm the most powerful person in this movie, and I give control of the final cut to Borman. Borman was a new director, basically. He had directed one movie before this, and it wasn't even a Hollywood film. It was a British movie, and it was pretty small. And all of a sudden, he's at the helm of this giant project. And then his buddy Marvin really just kind of made it possible by signing away the final cut to him.
Yeah, I was going to bring that up and ask you guys what you thought about this being his first, I mean, really his first feature. I mean, that's incredible just how well it worked out. People can't ask for a better first feature than that, I think. And also, it really is like an auteur-driven film. I mean, there was so much there that, like you said, down to, you know, painting elements of that parking garage to match her outfit, or the mood of the movie. It seemed to be an experiment that really worked out in Borman's favor.
When I first watched it, I didn't see the art housey French New Wave elements from it. I definitely see them now. I see the Godard and Rene style dreaminess, jump cuts, the quirkiness of both of them. Thinking about it now, I'm thinking of like Last Year at Marion Bad and just how over the top and dreamy that is. But, you know, again, that scene of when the woman just keeps getting up on the bed, I definitely see that from there. When I first watched it, I thought the whole time about Vertigo, and probably just because they're both in San Francisco. But I also, you know, saw the similarities because it has that paranoid buzziness to it, of where you're kind of always feeling like the protagonist is looking over his shoulder. And whenever you feel like the protagonist has a grip on what's going on, it actually turns out that they've got him again. It's one more layer than you thought it was going to be.
Jake, to what you were saying about the auteur part of it, I think that this is totally the era where like the director's king in the 60s and 70s, and it's very reflective of that. And, you know, Borman said that he thinks that like the purpose of a filmmaker is to have everything in the movie to be intended. Nothing in the movie should be extraneous or unintended. It should be like entirely a product of the director's vision, which I think is like, that's like the definition of auteurism. And yeah, I just think that it's really impressive that a person at that point in their career could have such a command of all these elements and wrangle this all together into a cohesive story.
That's kind of a cool connection to the Batman film, because we said it's an animated film, so literally every single thing is done on purpose. It's literally drawn on purpose. It's kind of cool. It's kind of cinema becoming pieces of art, really, to the fullest extent. Everything takes on a certain symbolism now because it is an auteur, it is a choice. Like, everything is, it's not really this nebulous studio that's like a nebulous popular culture. It's very much their personal inner psyche and many individual choices, which is cool.
Also, while we're still on the auteur topic, I wanted to, I guess, bring it back to the Schrader essay, because I had a flashback memory of reading it, because he kind of pits film noir differently than that. He said there was a critical revival in the U.S. in the 60s, but film noir lost out on that too. The revival was auteur, director oriented, and film noir wasn't. He said auteur criticism is interested in how directors are different. Film noir criticism is concerned with what they have in common. And that's really fascinating, and maybe that represents a kind of break with that classic element, because he kind of explained noir as something that was really a full production and crew driven endeavor where everyone was working at the top of their game. The lighting was perfect. It was a real technician driven thing to get everything quite right.
I definitely agree with that. I think noir is such a formalist's medium. It's not a thinker's medium or a philosopher's medium. It's very much a technician, a lighting person, and an expressionist. It's totally in the lighting and the color and the composition. And I think that's the way Borman thinks. This movie is all about compositions. Even the way he shoots the LA River, it's such every shot to him becomes this object or this symbol that has all these other hidden meanings into it. And Lee Marvin doesn't say that much in the movie, so you kind of need to use the landscapes and the compositions to infer about Lee Marvin's interiority, because he's not a very talkative fellow. He's kind of just this pissed off guy who's beating people up.
Yeah, I think that film noir is just, at the end of the day, so simple. You know, especially as we talk about the French New Wave influence, you also have Godard making Breathless, which is like a noir trope idea, you know, his little take on it. And, you know, he's just, you know, his whole take is that it's just about a girl and a gun. And that's, you know, as simple as it gets. And I think with film noir, at least for me, I enjoy them so much because I feel pretty like full after consuming them, even though a lot of the ideas in them are so simple. I mean, you just have a drifter detective, he falls in love with the girl screws him over, he gets caught up in something bad, and then he dies. And that's it. But you can reprint that, you know, 1,000 times, and it's still, you know, there's something satisfactory about it, even though you kind of know that, you know, at the end of the day, this is not going to go well for him.
Yeah, I like that Godard quote. Soderbergh asked Borman, what are some of the movies you were watching at the time that were really getting you interested in making movies? And he says, there was a feeling that cinema was being renewed, French New Wave, British New Wave, Fellini, Antonioni. It was explosive. And he said, for me, composition is terribly important. I was intoxicated with anamorphic. He's talking about the anamorphic format and lenses. And then he also says the critics helped a ton, and that he basically wouldn't have his career without Pauline Kael, which you guys know I love Pauline Kael, so I had to give her a little shout out there. He's basically like, she was the one who praised my first movie inordinately, and that's why I got all these offers to do these follow-up pictures. Otherwise, I would have just been has-been. So Pauline Kael, she's the gift that keeps on giving.
I think it's fair to say that there's been death of the critic, and that's maybe a big reason why cinema suffers today, you know, is that you don't have this intellectual engagement, and not even in a critical way. This is obviously a case where encouragement really birthed something beautiful. Maybe that's what we need to do. Maybe we should be the cultural critics of our time for cinema. I mean, it's kind of what we're doing.
I think so. Taste is the last moat. It's the one thing that, you know, the technological revolution is not going to be able to do. So, go for it, guys.
Can AI taste, you know?
Yeah, there you go.
Yeah.
The quote from Pauline Kael in the Bonnie and Clyde review that she mentioned point blank, she called it intermittently dazzling, which from her is like 5 stars. It's like, you know, she's not easy to please. If she said that about my movie, I'd get it tattooed on my back. That's all I'm gonna say.
For this next part, we discussed the movies. I want to just play a quick game of, is this noir or not? Is like Jared brought up earlier, like a movie like Matrix, right? You could say that's noir, but then someone will say, no, that's not noir, that's science fiction. But it's, you know, it's about corruption, it's at night, it's in urban landscapes, it's vertical. I just like how the edges of noir are so wide that you can kind of make the case for anything. So I guess I'll posit some movies to you guys and hear if you think they're noir or not.
Let's do it.
First one, Apocalypse Now.
Definitely not.
No. Too much action.
No,
Like that.
I would agree. Too much action.
Okay. That's interesting because I looked it up and someone had written about it being jungle noir, and like tried to make it like its
So
own.
stupid. Anything you could say, like anything is like it's interpersonal noir. Oh, it's like war noir. You could say anything.
Interpersonal no.
You could say anything is noir. It's slice of life noir. Like that's so stupid. I also like. I just do think that noir. I'm like a purist in the sense that like it really is a certain time period, and it is also like yeah, a certain visual aesthetic. Like I would maybe consider a noir film made after the 50s, 60s as noir if it was shot in black and white, which I know sounds like stupid. Yeah, okay, give me that look.
That's so not true.
Okay, whatever. Just keep
No.
asking.
This is why this is great, because I wanted to have this debate, but because it gets at what noir is. But you wouldn't consider L.A. Confidential noir? It's like classic noir.
I think it's neo noir.
Well, yeah, classic neo-noir.
Yeah, exactly. Exactly.
Of the three that we watched, you could maybe argue that the most pure form of the noirs is the Batman movie, even though it's the
Yeah.
furthest away from it. It has the most of the original tropes and traits. It just happens to be Batman and it's in animation. But, you know, if you had that live action, it's just as noir as Double Indemnity is.
Okay, the next one, Blade Runner. Noir or not noir?
Noir.
Way closer to noir than
Okay,
Apocalypse.
but that was made in the 80s?
80s.
Yeah, 82. And it's in color.
Closer to a noir is what I think.
It actually, it birthed Neon Noir, which you then see...
Oh, yeah.
Then you see Drive, and then you see Inherent Vice.
Yeah.
Neon Noir.
Wow.
Neon noir, I didn't know about that.
Has
Neon
anyone
Noir.
ever done a neon dark deco noir?
Uh-oh. Biggs has no idea.
Oh no.
Jake, you got your
Yeah.
debut film right there, man.
Wow. Now I'll ask chat to make me no, I'm kidding, I'm not.
I've also heard tech noir. Have you guys heard of that?
Yes.
Apparently, that's what they say the Terminator.
Techno.
I think it's like Terminator.
Here we go again with the
For me,
everything.
that's too far out there. I wouldn't do it. I see
Okay.
what they're saying, though.
Here's an example of a film that's like 110% not noir by any stretch of the imagination. Lawrence of Arabia. To me, an epic like can't be a noir. Matrix.
No.
Maybe.
It's night.
Explain it.
It could
Explain
be
it.
like a neo noir, tech noir.
What do you say, Neo?
Wait.
It's good.
Yeah. Well, okay, I thought you were gonna say like something that definitely couldn't be noir is like When Harry Met Sally or Manhattan or something like that.
Yeah.
Like a rom-com is pretty clearly. Or like I remember last year I had posted about my Noirvember films and I threw in The Lady Eve, which is a screwball comedy that I had just seen in November that was like black and white. And my friend was like, "What? This is so not a noir. This is fully a comedy." So I think anything that had, but it's funny because also when you watch noir films, they usually have a little bit of humor to them. Like there's a little tongue-in-cheek scenes here and there. There's always
Sure.
like a couple of jokes, a couple of like funny situations. But yeah, screwball comedy, like it's like Shakespearean. Like do people die or do people get married? Like it usually has the ending will tell you how to read it, kind of.
There's the Wilder movie from 1954 that takes place during Christmas. Let me see what it is.
The
But
Apartment.
I've heard, yeah. So The Apartment people describe as a Christmas noir. I've seen before. What do you guys think about that? I don't understand it. I actually love that movie. I love Wilder, Sunset Boulevard, but I don't see how it's a noir. I don't see the seediness, the sultriness, how dark it is.
It's pretty light. Jack Lemmon is such a goofball. You can't
Yeah, it's
compare
like a
him
melodrama.
like Humphrey Bogart. You know what I mean? Like he's so far from that.
I feel like that's not a noir.
Yeah.
Okay. What about Zodiac?
Yes. That is
Definitely.
a noir.
Definitely? Okay.
Noir, yeah. I feel
Like
like,
Parallax View.
yeah.
Yeah.
I'd say yes.
See, like if I were grouping some of those movies, like it's almost, if I think of the Parallax View, I think political thriller.
Yeah.
Yeah.
I don't really think noir. Like it has noir elements, but I think political thriller. Or even the erotic thriller is like almost to me its own genre, like Basic Instinct.
Yeah, I was thinking Basic Instinct could be noir and erotic thriller. A lot of erotic
I think almost all erotic thrillers are inherently noirs. I don't know one that wouldn't be one. I think all of the Michael Douglas 90s erotic thrillers are all noirs. And I think that the contemporary noir, the contemporary thriller is more often than not a noir film.
Can we
Like
talk about
the
Gone Girl for a sec?
That
And the
doesn't
book,
fit your definition, your strict definition. Is
when I'm saying noir outside of the 40s, 50s, I'm saying neo-noir. I just don't want to have to keep saying that.
I'm just rage baiting you.
Yeah, it worked. Huge. But I love that movie. I read the book and the movie, it's like one of the very few instances where the movie is better than the book, in my opinion. It's like,
Galaxy brain of casting Tyler Perry in that and it working like really well. Like what?
I know, and there's like no comedy in his character at all, which is so funny. Ben Affleck is ironically the funniest character in that movie because he's such a doofus.
I love Gone Girl. I think you have the like whole conspiracy element of the classic noir tropes. You obviously have the femme fatale. She's nuts, but in the best way ever. Yeah, I mean, I think Gone Girl's great. But
You
it
also have like
definitely,
you have a lot of double crossing, both with like
yeah,
Nick, with like the Emily Ratajkowski character. Like you find out, oh, he's really having an affair, and then double with her halfway through, oh, she's not really dead, and then with the Neil Patrick Harris character, like it's just double cross after double cross after double cross. It's like such a rewarding watch. I love that movie.
in all these contemporary thrillers, though, I have that gut feeling when I watch it of like that real suspense of like what is gonna come out next. But from the classic noirs, you don't feel like that. Like the relationship you have while viewing it is really as a viewer, like you're just seeing the kind of the story unfold. So even watching Out of the Past or watching In a Lonely Place, like you're just kind of seeing this man kind of slowly decay until the end, and see where he stops off along the way for a little pit stop. But in the contemporary neo noirs, the Gone Girls, the Inceptions, the Shutter Islands, the whole time you're kind of holding your seat, like what is going to happen next, what is going to happen to this guy. What do you guys think are the ideas or changes that make them feel so much more tension when you view them?
Well, I think we were talking about this with Double Indemnity before and Sunset Boulevard, where the danger, where like the life threat comes in, seems to kind of change the whole vibe of the movie. Double Indemnity, even though he's talking at the beginning of the film on the tape recorder, it's not the whole being shot, the whole danger doesn't come in till the last third or last quarter of the film. Versus like Sunset Boulevard or Gone Girl, that danger of death, that suspense is really towards the front of the film and you feel it coming in and out, in and out, in and out. It's a horror film almost in that way, which is maybe something noir film plays with mystery versus a thriller plays with horror, I think, is fair to say.
I'm just gonna rattle out names. If you think it's noir, thumbs up. If you think it's not noir, thumbs down. If you haven't seen the movie, just nothing. Okay? The Great Beauty.
I haven't seen it.
In Bruges. You have to go thumbs up or
Can I
thumbs
do
down.
a side thumb? Probably not, but I love that movie.
Blood.
Wait, I'm realizing that audio only listeners. Sorry. You got to watch on YouTube.
Thumbs down.
Okay, yeah, so just say thumbs down, I guess, out loud. Okay. No Country for Old Men.
Thumbs down.
No, you know what? That's noir to me. That's neo noir.
It's a
I think
thriller
so.
to me.
Nolan's The Prestige.
No.
Thumbs down.
No, thumbs down.
There's another Nolan film, that early one, that I think you could say thumbs up on.
100% on that one. Yeah.
Talking
Yeah,
about
No.
Memento, definitely.
Yeah, that, yes.
Memento
But
is
also-
noir. Goodfellas.
No.
No.
That's noir for me. I feel like gangster films are classic.
Well, the gangster film and the pulpiness is what kind of grew into the noir. So,
yeah.
there's inherently overlap, but I don't think that.
And the corruption and the fatalism.
Is it like, I think gangster films, ironically, there's more, not naivete, but like a honesty to them. Even something like Eastern Promises, which is really dark. It's like, oh, I just love my dad. Versus noir, it's just a little bit more gritty all the time. And both have equal amounts of violence, but I don't know. I think I find gangster films weirdly more hopeful.
I think the gangster films are more theatrical. The
Yeah.
noir films are like weirdly more real.
Yeah.
Like it feels like, as you were saying in the beginning, Miles, it feels like these are everyday people who are kind of converted to the dark side. Whereas the gangster, as Isabel said, is just like, yeah, like I need to pay for a new car for my girl or she's gonna leave me, so I'm gonna go rob this bank, and that's that.
The Thing, the John Carpenter film.
No, not a noir.
Jake, you're on the fence.
Yeah, I'm on the fence. Can a horror film be noir? I mean,
Make the case.
no, I don't want to make the case.
Taxi. Is Taxi Driver noir?
Yeah.
It's
Political?
neo-noir. Classic
It's-
neo-noir.
It's neo noir, but to me it's really on the edge. What's the other Scorsese? After Hours.
Oh, After
Hours. Some people call After Hours a noir. I don't know.
No.
That's too funny.
Yeah, it's too goofy.
exactly.
Not fatalistic enough.
Scorsese in general, I think, has too much happiness, moments of happiness in his movies.
Shutter Island is pretty textbook noir, though. It's literally a detective going on an island. Now, it becomes a psychological thriller, which is the contemporary nature of it, but the roots of it are it's a detective trying to go figure out what's going on.
That's true.
Okay. What about Cape Fear? I've never seen it, but
100% noir.
right? That's what I've heard. I've heard that's like Scorsese's take on noir. Never seen it.
Because
though.
there's an original Cape Fear from like the 50s, I think.
Bonnie and Clyde.
Yeah.
No,
I was wondering about that during the episode.
gangster film for me. It's what we just said. It's that they're going to get the bags that they can support each other. There's no really grittiness to it.
Yeah.
They're honest about what they are.
Yeah, violence is different than grittiness, and I think that film has violence, but it doesn't really have grittiness. Also, they're both so honest with each other. Like they're both so
Yeah.
like trying to make it work. There's not really that like classic psychological betrayal that is
Oh, wow.
renewal.
Yeah, that's almost a better argument against it. Yeah, that's really good. as
Yeah,
well.
if they double crossed each other or
No, it's
you
good.
know,
I agree
cheated
with
on
that.
each other.
So there has to be a betrayal for it to be noir. I see
I
that.
think that's like the gritty sultriness of it is that you can't trust people. There's a double crossing along with the more classic like conspiracy as well is a really big one for me. Kind of that societal decay where the conspiracy is showing it all.
Yeah.
And I don't think that if anything that's one movie where the police are actually like all good people.
Right.
Yeah.
What about Night Moves?
Noir, for sure.
Yeah,
Yeah.
that feels like a noir to me.
He's like a private detective. He gets betrayed by the femme fatale. It's shot at night. It's fatalistic. Yeah, it's corrupt. Like the whole world's corrupt.
What about The Conversation?
But I think it's just a proper thriller, and I think it's one of the rare instances that it's a thriller that's not
Yeah.
noirish.
I agree.
Okay, Casablanca.
No,
Not a-
it's like a romance movie. It's not.
Melodrama.
Yeah, the drama. It's not a noir.
It's got a freaking detective with the Homburg on the.
No,
on
but they love each other.
What do you
But they
guys
love
think
each other.
of one person we haven't spoke about is Michael Mann, and he
Oh.
is one of the biggest neo noirs, but it's a heist movie though too, and then you see it repatriated so many times. The Dark Knight's first scene is such a callback to Heat, and then you also see Mann's Miami Vice, both the movie as well as producing the TV show.
Wait, actually,
Or-
Heat is such a
there's
good
a-
example of a noir. I feel like a neo noir because it's like every man for himself, betrayal, like bad guys. It's not really clear who's the bad guy, who's the good guy. Like you feel for everyone when they got shot, and you also kind of hope everybody gets shot. I feel like,
Also, Thief. Michael Mann's Thief.
yeah,
That's like a classic neo noir.
yeah.
It's actually a neon noir as well. I think it would fit Jake's new genre that he created. There's like so many shots of like neon marquees in Chicago. Did we decide on Citizen Kane? Is that not a noir?
I don't think so.
Oh, I'm glad you brought that up though, because there was one last topic that I kind of wanted to discuss with noir film, theme of nostalgia that I think I've really enjoyed investigating in 60s, 70s cinema. I think our first episode I was talking about Five Easy Pieces, which to me is such like a quintessential 60s, 70s film that is like about longing for your childhood when things were simpler, and that kind of as a metaphor for questioning the promise of America. And kind of talking more about noir films, I feel like that's actually the birth of this disillusionment with the dream, the promise, very much, again, in conversation with what the West represents and what rebuilding yourself in the West and America represents. And so nostalgia, I think, is a really important element of cinema, uniquely tied to cinema and photography, especially with music, that gets really like exploited for the first time in noir films and gets pushed even further in like the avant-garde of French New Wave, of New Hollywood, and beyond. I don't know if you have any thoughts on that.
Yeah.
No, yes, I don't know.
I think the nostalgia is a big thing. I think that ties into just that overall longing for the past that all these characters have, whether it's the past that they had prior to moving to the West Coast, the past that they had when they had a family. I mean, the biggest longing for the past quote that I can think of is from A Lonely Place, when Bogart's character says, "I was born when she kissed me, I died when she left me, and I lived for a few weeks while she loved me." That to me kind of really encapsulates the whole genre of, these people who are just so overtly decayed in their psyches, and they tie so much of their worth and sense of belonging towards a few weeks of having this woman make them whole.
It's like I also think that's such a great movie to represent this questioning of yourself. America is questioning itself, the West is questioning itself, the promise of questioning itself. Because in The Lonely Place, that's the whole thing that breaks up the couple, right? Is this violence that Humphrey Bogart has inside of himself that is only realized at the end of the film. It's the idea of something is better than the actual reality of it. And I think a lot of the films that we've talked about on this episode kind of try to get at that.
Jared, I feel like when you think about noir, you think a lot about the romance aspect.
Yeah.
Is there
I definitely do.
Miles?
I definitely do. I think that from a commercial appeal as well, the femme fatale is something that definitely attracts a lot of people. I think of Shawshank Redemption when they have the big poster of Gilda in it. I have The Affair from Trinidad in my room, which is the same two leads as Gilda, so it's Rita Hayworth and whatever that gentleman's name is. But yeah, I think that the romance aspect is something that's really big in it because it often is the catalyst towards the detective going down the rabbit hole. Whether he's, doing so because he's longing for the past, and, there are noir films where his girl has been kidnapped or she's left him or, she's gone missing. Or he could be doing the morally ambiguous thing because he thinks that whatever he does is going to, win her back in some regard. So I think that, that always, the femme fatale always spurs, even in noirs, and to classic film noirs. So, looking at Basic Instinct, Michael Douglas's character in the beginning of the movie is a normal detective. In fact, he's a bit of a hotshot. Like, he's, the man. And the woman, absolutely ruins him by the end. He is, a guy who's breaking all the rules, become way more violent. Like, she's just absolutely decimated him. The women in a lot of these films are the light on the fire.
Yeah,
Or maybe they even light the fire themselves.
I was looking at my letterbox the other day, and like all my top 4 movies, it's like even the poster, it's like all just like relationship movies. It's like couples movies. And I was like, oh gosh, why do I love like relationship couple movies so much? And I have a thesis, which not to get too like abstract and grandiose, but like, you can make a sweeping generalization of the Western like history from 19th century, 20th century, 21st century. It's like all about efficiency, all about logic, all about science. Like, we want things to be more and more logical in terms of like technological development, efficiency, business, like all these things. We kind of as like a society need that. We move towards that. That's like more productive. But relationships, specifically like romantic relationships, it brings up the most illogical sides of ourselves quite often. And it you go for people that aren't good for you, or like you have friends with people that drive you crazy, or like you keep breaking up, you keep getting back together knowing that it won't work. Like, relationships encapsulate the human infallible quality and the human like capacity for error and being illogical. And so I think yeah, having like a romance, having a femme fatale is like the perfect symbol of that. It's like you have a character who's like, no emotional quality to him, like a hardened PI. They're just there for the facts. They're just looking for the straightforward thing. But then they have a woman who gets them in that illogical messiness that makes life so interesting. And that like keeps coming against, like that's the central tension, I feel, of 19th and 20th century. How does this thumbs up come? I don't know.
I like that. I think that's a pretty good spot to end. We did 2 hours, guys.
And that's an episode. Thanks, guys, so much for tuning in to this episode on noir. I know we covered a lot of stuff, but I hope you found it as rewarding as we did.
Oh, and I brought props as well. I brought props. I brought the Cinema Retro in print, so you have to go get it. Get your Cinema Retro copies. Yeah, I mean, hey, we're all about physical media here, especially after we tried to find Kiss Me Deadly on any streaming service, and it has been scrubbed from the internet. So if you want to learn more about Blu-rays or anything else, get a copy of this. It's great. It's a good companion to the podcast.
Follow Jared on Letterboxd. I'll put his Letterboxd on the screen. He's always, keeping that diary.
Thank you, Jared, for coming.
Thank you, Jared.
Jared, you're hired. You are wonderful.
Lots of fun. Thank you, guys. Appreciate you.
Enjoy the rest of Noirvember. Watch some noirs, and we'll see you next time.
See you next time.
See you guys.